Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming back after lunch. It's a good turnout. So I'm really looking forward to sort of coming today just to share with you a little bit more about how we're thinking about CX from a data standpoint at Microsoft and just some of the work that we're doing. I wanted to start with a statistic from Gartner that I think is a pretty thought-provoking one. Gartner reports that 81% of executives believe they'll compete on customer experience alone in the not-too-distant future. Yet, only 22% believe they've developed an experience that exceeds customer expectations, which is quite an interesting parallel, I think, between the growing phenomenon of CX as a discipline, and obviously, you all here today is a great testament to that, but still very few companies really think they're delivering that experience. So what I wanted to do today is really just cover a bit about the journey that we've been on and what we think are some of the important attributes to consider with a bit more of a focus on data, because we believe to really unlock the value of CX over the next few years, it's going to be more and more about data and how you think about it and how you invest in it in your own organizations. I think most people in the room will be familiar with Microsoft. Our story started out in 1975 with some slightly dodgy haircuts, beards, and a bit of old technology. And really, we've gone on an interesting journey over the last 4 decades. From a company that was selling products, you might remember some of the earlier products, and really it was about how do we get as many products out there around the world as we possibly can, to today where we're much more of a services-led cloud computing company that is all about putting our customers first. And really, it's been a fascinating journey for us over the period of time. And in terms of where we are today, so I think one of the first things to say is just that the transformation that we've been on from being primarily a product-led company that was all about putting a PC on every desk and in every home to being an organization that's all about enabling people. It's really that the catalyst for that change was when we had a new CEO, Satya Nadella. And one of the first things he did was really ask his board and leadership team, what would the world miss if Microsoft didn't exist? What would the gap be? Would there be a gap? And that was really the question. And what he concluded with those meetings and the early engagements is that we weren't customer-centric enough as an organization. So we built a whole new mission statement. We invested significantly in a change program over the last 4 or 5 years. The mission statement is around empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. It sounds pretty bold. I love the fact it was about people, and it put customer experience right at the heart of that. So one of the questions I've been asked quite often is what is our customer experience strategy at Microsoft? And we have around sort of 20,000 people working in support roles across the company. CX is a growing discipline within Microsoft. We have teams, in a global model for how we run all of that. But the way I think about it in terms of a strategy is the first thing we're trying to do is empower our customers. So this is all around how do we help customers figure out what they can do with the technology and what it means for them. We then think about how can we help customers. So, all of the support interactions we have across a whole range of different product lines, solution lines, services, consumer, commercial. How do we think about really driving and improving that support experience to make sure that our customers stay with us and are loyal? And then the third piece is really around advise. So how can we help customers figure out, what is the considerations they need to be making from security through to privacy, risk, as well as just making the most of what they're already using and investing in from a technology standpoint. So the CX focus at Microsoft is really a blend of those 3 things, and then wrapped around that sort of how we think about service and support as a strategy and as a function to enable us to grow and continue to do the right thing for our customers. So the focus that I wanted to talk through today was much more around data, because I've got a belief that to really unlock the potential of CX, it really relies on a new way of thinking about data. And to really accelerate the value of CX, I think in any company, we really need to start by first understanding, what are all of the data inputs? What are all of those inputs from many different sources? And then how can we think about tapping into them to really unlock and accelerate customer experience? So when we think about enabling CX, we're thinking about culture, we're thinking about how we basically do a better job with bringing all of our data together. Of course, we're thinking about technology as well and how the role of technology sort of plays within all of those things. So what we've been doing over the last few years is figuring out from a CX standpoint what are all of the programs, the investments that we need to make to go and accelerate within the business. And I wanted to give you a quick example of where we've changed an input, and as a result, it's given us much more intelligence around data that has then allowed us to go forward and change the business. So before I go into that, this is an example that is based on AI. We've talked a little bit about AI today as a theme, and I certainly think it's one that is really growing in importance. And what we're seeing at Microsoft is a lot of businesses in the UK are now moving from sort of some of the fear generated from the headlines like this into really starting to explore what AI can mean for their organizations, and particularly the role of AI in CX. So I'm going to start with an example from sort of how we think differently about the support experience. So on the left, you'll see that these are our basically our support trends over the last few years. So FY is financial year, sorry for the acronym there. And what you'll see there is, from a support standpoint, we've had an increasing number of support tickets, mainly because the growth and the trajectory that we've been on as an organisation, resulting in more customer inquiries coming through. But what you'll see there is the sort of the classification between the assisted support versus an agent support. And really what we're seeing is that more of our customers are able to find answers to their questions through basically engaging with self-service and finding those answers through our tools and systems and websites than actually speaking directly to an agent. And if you were an agent working in Microsoft, you might have looked at that data and really felt fearful for what does this mean for your role as we're investing in the technologies and really thinking through, how can we make things easier for our customers. But the reality is, we see this in a different light. So when I spent time with many of our support teams, the thing that they love most about their job is actually helping customers and doing things that they feel are valuable and really supporting. The tasks that are monotonous, the same thing time and time again, lower energy for them, lower sort of job satisfaction, if you like. So whilst we recognised quite early on there was a fear and inertia around this sort of shift that we were seeing as we embraced the technology in our own business, we probably didn't do enough to help them understand, what does that mean for the roles that we were investing in. And actually what we are trying to do is make sure that the support agents we have are retrained and reskilled to focus more on customer value for things that we think are more important to customers. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of how this played out in our Xbox business. So the two ways we think about support as part of the pilot that we've been running with Xbox is that you could have a human support agent that would be there to solve your challenge, and pretty much this had been the standard process. But we thought this was a really good area of the business to test a different way for us to think about support. And then obviously from a sort of AI and bot perspective, you could have a bot. And what we see from a lot of the customers that we work with is often they think of one or the other. Either it's 100% a human interaction or it's 100% AI generated response type bot type engine. And what we try to do is think about how do we bring these things together to really improve the experience for both the customer but also the agents that we have. And what we found is by bringing the two together, we could really both accelerate the satisfaction, and you saw that the trend that we were already on before, as well as just improve the experience for the customer. So I don't know if we've got any Xbox fans in the room. Anyone play Xbox? No Xbox? Yep, a few people. That's great. Hopefully this never applied to you, because hopefully you haven't needed a refund. But we had a common challenge with people wanting buying the wrong game and then wanting a refund on that game to go and buy another one. So if I just compare the experience that we were providing before we introduced the AI, it was essentially a processing by a human agent would engage with a customer over a chat forum. They would ask them, what's the number, what was the customer number or the order number. The customer would then have to go and trawl away, and I'm sure we've all been through this experience before, go and find the number, then they might miss a bit, can't find the email. And that whole thing basically goes through, and it takes about 18 minutes. So we thought this was a really great example of where we could introduce technology to help solve the time taken there. That wasn't really where we want to be adding value for our customers for what should be a relatively simple thing. So what you'll notice from the screen is that throughout this process, the agent was engaged with the customer. They were looking up the order number, and that took quite a while to actually go and get through. The virtual agent experience is a little bit different in that you'll see the virtual agent already knew what that customer had ordered. They already knew the 2 games that they had ordered. They could speed up that process by just asking the customer, which one is it that you wanted the refund for? And that whole experience took about a minute. So we were able to reduce the time, on one support inquiry from 18 minutes right the way down to 1 minute. But of course, we recognise the fact that doesn't always, work out. So throughout that interaction with the AI bot, there is always the option to engage with a human. And I think the really cool thing with this is that it was about humans working with the technology and with AI versus in separation. And I think a few other things we learned along the way is that as we started to introduce this as a pilot for the Xbox business, our team were initially very nervous about this. There was sort of the sentiment that, that thing can't know more than what I'm doing. And actually we found that some of our team were initially not so keen to engage with it and to really trust what the AI was telling us, despite the fact it had been their colleagues and largely a lot of them that were involved in designing the algorithm, looking at the responses that we were building into the intelligent engine. So it was just a great lesson for us on how we thought about culture, change management, and really bringing people along that journey. And we saw a really good set of data around how that worked and enabled people. As I said, 25 minutes in some cases over the phone, down to a minute through the virtual thing. So it's really giving customers a lot more sort of speed to resolve issues that we found could be issues that take away from satisfaction and how they're experiencing Microsoft. And actually that reduction in time then freed up the agents to think about more valuable uses of their time. And I should say from the beginning, we're investing heavily in our support business as a function. There have been no changes really to the amount of people we're hiring into the business in those roles. But what has shifted is the type of work those people are doing to much more higher value experiences. And the really cool thing that we get from all of this is for the first time, and what had been a whole set of data that was largely fragmented, given it was sort of human-generated data, is we're getting real-time intelligence in terms of what the sentiment is for each of the people that we're engaging with over that support case. And I don't know if many people in the room, given the audience today, you might run surveys. We do quite a number of surveys to get insights. But what we're finding is probably around 20% of customers took the time to give us that feedback. And usually it came, 3 or 4 days, at least 3 or 4 days later, if at all. So we've now, as part of this process, ingesting all of that data to really tell what is the sentiment, both from the survey, but what's really cool about how we've thought about AI is that it also gives us real-time feedback. So while our customers are engaging with the virtual agent, we have a real-time dashboard that can see from what the customer is saying, what is the sentiment, is it positive, negative, or neutral? And where we can see sustained negative sentiment, a human agent can actually intervene and pick forward and take on that conversation to really move it into the right direction. And I've given a bit of a consumer example today, but this also applies exactly to our commercial business. And this is why I think the world of CX is so exciting, because we're moving into a world of largely looking in the mirror at what's happened, looking at data and things that have already happened and support tickets that might have happened a week ago, into a world where we can use predictive data to actually understand what a customer's sentiment might be before they've even picked up the phone or engaged with click to chat. And I think that's what's really enabled when we get the right data and the right technology working together. So I think that was just one example that gives you a sense of how we've had to reimagine the way we service and support to get data that can enable us to move the business forward faster. That hopefully gave a bit of an example, but that's just one way. We're looking at a whole range of different inputs, from how we do surveys to how we run our support business to how we serve our customers to how we ingest information through the products and services that we're developing. And we've learned quite a lot along the way around how we need to think differently about data to give customers a better experience. A few things we've learned are the fact that When you really want to drive change with CX, it doesn't help when every different department has got their own data set, their own customer set, their own support desk, their own services. So the big piece of work we've done over the last few years is to try and bring all of that together. And we were one of perhaps a few companies that really welcomed GDPR because we believe privacy is a human right and something that's of very high significance for our customers. But it did give us the opportunity to look left to right across all of the data inputs and figure out how we bring all of those things in. And I think it led to a lot of cultural change in that we had, not all teams thought this was a great idea at first to buy into. Not all of the people wanted to go on this journey of AI plus human capability in the support business. So there was a lot to be said around change management and really unpicking from a culture standpoint what that means. We also learned quite a lot around governance and processes. And obviously, when we're thinking about AI, just having that human override option we've learned was really important. We learned that putting in place the right standards, the right data and privacy treatment for how we collect and store data is vital, and the fact of making sure that we're not taking data for things that we don't actually need in the first place. So it was only by doing all of that sort of audit and data we could really get onto the cool stuff that I think is going to make the biggest difference for customers. And then I would say, we try to make it participative for different teams. So we recognise we had data coming from events, from a whole range of different things, and just bringing it together was what it's all about. And then finally, we learned that we made a few mistakes along the way. We underestimated the resistance we might have had from our own internal support teams for AI. We didn't necessarily get right empathy as part of the algorithm in the first place for how we were responding to customers. But it was this journey of continuous improvement and trying each day to move it forward that I think's made the biggest difference for us as we've really tried to bring our CX strategy together. So that was it. So hopefully that just gave you a bit of perspective on how we're thinking differently. I've hopefully got a few minutes for questions. I ended with a picture of the London backdrop, so it's pretty foggy out there and you might not see anything. So.
Thank you, Daniel. That's fantastic. Do you have any questions for Daniel in the room this morning? Oh, just one at the back. I'll bring this down to you one moment.
Thanks. Hi. I'm just really interested to understand how you kind of balance it off between solving a customer problem really quickly, but still learning enough about it to prevent recurrence, because making an accidental purchase could just keep happening if you don't understand why. So just intrigued to how you work through that.
It's a great question. And part of the analysis that we do as a result of having all of this data and the right data strategy is we can then diagnose what are the systemic issues versus the ones that we might be able to fix locally. So that example around Xbox purchase actually led to us to redesign the whole of the site to make it clearer. There was an additional step added in on the purchase journey so that customers could confirm. But I think before we had this approach, we wouldn't have necessarily been able to easily diagnose what are the consistent themes and questions coming through. I think the other theme, the point you mentioned on sort of time and duration, I mentioned at the beginning that the role of the agents changed. And really their role is now to focus much more on the other elements of the plan around, how do we really help and inspire customers. So one of the things we introduced while we're engaging with customers is adding in an additional, we call it uptell. So how can we tell them something else that might be useful? So our agents have got in front of them all of the data around what a customer might be using, what they're not using, what's their sentiment, and we're making it really clear for them while you're engaging with a customer. Add something on that they might find useful. Talk to them about a feature they might not be using but already paying for. If they enjoying that game, what's a similar one you could share with them? What about launch of new products? So in some areas we haven't actually reduced the support time in every case, but what we have done is change the mix of time for where they're engaging and moved it up to higher value conversations.
Wonderful, thank you. One more question at the front.
Just a really quick one. How long did that process take from deciding to sort of look at this to bringing that in and making it live?
It was a 2-year journey.
2 years.
Yep. And we're still not done. And I think with a lot of these things, we probably won't ever be done. We've got a roadmap. We're looking at different features, and I think as we get better at the data side and really learning, hearing more, training the algorithms, but also figuring out how we continue to get that bit right with human capability plus the technology, we'll continue to evolve it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much,
Thank
Daniel.
you.